My name is Janese and I teach in the Sociology department at Emmanuel College. Haiti's a hard place in many ways, and before the earthquake there were a lot of struggles with poverty, there were a lot of struggles with basic necessities, food, water, shelter, clothing. But the one thing that I always noticed was the joy that the Haitian people have, and the joy that the children have. They love to play, they love to sing. The Haitian people are some of the most welcoming and warm people I've ever met. My first trip to Haiti, I went with a group that was working in an orphanage, and we gave the orphanage staff a vacation for about a week's time so that they could get a break, which they're not used to getting, and we worked with the children in the orphanage. Before the earthquake, I felt like we were received with open arms. Oftentimes, children coming up to us and wanting to try and speak to us in English, or wanting to have their picture taken, wanting to wear our sunglasses. They often had a lot of fun interacting with us while we were there, and the adults also. They were very interested in American life and why we came to Haiti, and many times they were very appreciative of us coming to Haiti to try to do our part to help. I was actually traveling in Israel at the time that I heard about the earthquake, and I was on a tour, and someone was reading a newspaper and said that there had been a terrible earthquake in Haiti. And immediately I turned around to the person and started asking questions and trying to find out more information. And it was very hard to get a lot of information, so I had no idea that it was as massive of an earthquake as it was. And when we finally got off the bus for the day, I remember going as fast as I could to a television set and turning on CNN and seeing the destruction and the pictures that were coming in. And I remember just sitting down and crying and just thinking, I can't believe, of all places, that a devastating earthquake of that magnitude hit Haiti. I just felt like I wanted to go, I needed to go, I wanted to do my part to contribute and to try and help in a country that I had grown to love and respect. We work with an organization called World Relief, and it's an international development and relief agency that works all around the world, trying to help build churches. They build agricultural business, they do microfinancing, they do relief work in the immediate aftermath of disasters. And on this first trip back to Haiti, I was leading a team of actually doctors and nurses that were going to work in a hospital in Port-au-Prince. And then I was part of a team, since I'm not a doctor or a nurse, that was going to scout out sites, communities actually, that were the most devastated by the earthquake, to assess what needs they might have going forward, and to then see how World Relief with churches around the United States could partner with these communities to help drill new wells and build new homes and rebuild churches and start agricultural business and job opportunities for people. And it was 6 out of 7 days spent touring some of the most devastated communities in and around Port-au-Prince. We specifically targeted the 5 most devastated communities that World Relief had surveyed to assess their needs and see in what ways we could help. But that meant that day after day, hour after hour, we were seeing devastation, and we were talking to people in the community, some of which had lost every member of their immediate family, others of which had lost 10 and 15 members of their extended family, some of which told us they had been to more than 30 funerals just after the earthquake because of people that they had lost. What I remember the most is seeing so many blue tarps, just blue tarps everywhere. And the tarps were given by relief agencies for people to live under who had lost their homes and had nowhere else to live. And I just felt like mile after mile, minute after minute, we just kept seeing more and more blue tarps, and families trying to live, sometimes 6, 8, 10 people, in an area as big as an office with only a blue tarp covering them. And I remember that being extremely overwhelming when I first got there. When I returned, I remember going up to the top of a hillside and looking out at the landscape of Port-au-Prince And I definitely did not see as many blue tarps this time. And I remember taking a picture of it because I wanted to be able to look back and remember how many blue tarps I had seen a year prior. One of the experiences that stands out to me from the trip when I went back only 6 months after the earthquake was an experience that I have never had before. Oftentimes, when I've traveled in other countries, developing countries, as well as in Haiti prior to the earthquake, when children would see me, they would run up to me, they would want to try on my sunglasses. They would always ask me to take a picture of them, and then they'd want to see the picture on the digital camera, or they'd want to touch my hair because my hair was soft and they thought that was really unique, or things like that. I was in this one community way up on a hill, and it's up sort of on a rocky hillside where water is a bit more difficult for them to come by. And this little girl came up to me and stood next to me. And she said something to me very quietly, but I couldn't understand exactly what she was saying, and it took me a second before I understood her. And she was actually begging me for water. And that's all she wanted, was a drink of water. And that was devastating to me, because to me it showed the extent of the devastation, the extent of the need, and the desperation in a lot of ways of what happens when the infrastructure of your country is torn apart and your wells are damaged and there's no just drinking water. I think probably for me, the favorite place in Port-au-Prince that sticks out in my mind is the National Cathedral. The National Cathedral on my first couple trips was just this beautiful, gorgeous building that had stained glass windows, and it stood out in the city as a place of beauty in many ways. And when I first went back after the earthquake and saw it, and saw how it in many ways is in shambles and it had crumbled and the walls are half up and half down, and there's a tent city that was sort of built surrounding the National Cathedral, it really broke my heart. And for me, it was kind of a symbol of the devastation. At the same time, the Haitian people have such incredible faith, and faith in God, faith in a belief that tomorrow will be a better day, that it also was, at the same time, ironically, a symbol of hope, feeling as though, despite the fact that the National Cathedral is in shambles, the people in many ways have so much belief that they will rebuild and that they will get back to normal eventually. And honestly, that's been exactly what they've been doing. So when I returned to Haiti this past August, I recall one of the things I noticed right away that was very surprising to me is as we were leaving the airport and driving, I saw street signs on a lot of the streets, and I saw stoplights at some of the intersections. And it caught me off guard because prior to this trip, I don't recall ever seeing a lot of actual street signs on the streets in Haiti, or a lot of stoplights for that matter. I noticed that a lot of the buildings that were half up and half down when we had been there a year ago had been raised and leveled to the ground, and I couldn't help but notice the sound of jackhammers and building going on. And I was really quite surprised that there had been, pleasantly surprised, that there had been that much progress, really in a very short amount of time. And I remember before leaving for this most recent trip, people asked me, do you think you'll see a difference? Do you think they will have made much progress? And I had left Haiti a year ago so downtrodden by all that I saw and by how much devastation there was. I told people, you know, I don't know that it's going to be that different. I don't know that it can be that different. And I'm happy to say I was very surprised and impressed with how much they have done and how much they've been able to move forward. And some of that is based on the international aid that has come in, for sure. Some of that is based on the new president moving things forward and attempting to do what he can to push the recovery efforts forward. And a lot of that is based on the Haitians themselves literally getting out there and starting to pick up rock by rock and piece of rubble by piece of rubble by hand and putting them in wheelbarrows and taking them to where they can to get rid of them. And the Haitians have worked incredibly hard at trying to return their country to normal as much as they can. And one of the things that I heard said this time, which I think is really true, is Haiti is definitely recovering. And they are returning to normal. But I would say it's a new normal. It's a post-earthquake normal, where there is an awareness now of all the loss and the trauma that they've experienced. There is a sense of resiliency that we will rebuild and we will move forward and we will recover from all of this. But I think there is definitely still a bit of sadness in the hearts of Haitians. How could there not be? I think at this point, there are a few ways in which people can help. Certainly immediately, after a disaster like that, it's money. And it's sending of doctors and nurses and recovery, people that can do disaster relief and recovery work. At this point, that phase is largely over for the immediate need. Now we need to think about sort of maintenance and sustaining some of the help. The key really at this point is organizations who will be there for the long haul to support Haitians and who know the Haitian culture and the Haitian people and know how to best provide support and help financially to them. I think also just learning about Haiti and understanding why Haiti has had such difficulties and understanding the complexities of what's involved there in terms of the challenges that they face with poverty and global inequality and hunger issues and lack of literacy. I think for me, when people ask me, why do you do this type of work, or why do you go to a place like Haiti, I think the simplest answer is, I just want to do my part. I just want to contribute in some way. I want to show that I have compassion, that I want to see the best for people, whether it's people here in the United States, whether it's people in Haiti, whether it's people in other countries, and to show my support to people who are trying to make a better life and to live the best life that they can, as we all are. If we each just do our part, whatever that is, for each of us to decide, that I really do believe we can make a significant difference in our own communities, in our own countries, and in the world.